I can't hear you, a little louder.
What's your position on Indigenous issues in Canada?
Business issues? Oh, great. Okay, good question. That's been a complicated file for a long time. I've started to meet with some of the leaders there. It turns out many of them are very entrepreneurial. Let me give you an example. We have $219 billion of infrastructure projects, hydroelectric pipelines, nat gas, you name it, tied up or canceled in courts. It's just crazy. We're the can't-do country. So, for example, we spend $12 billion buying Saudi and Venezuelan oil in the St. Lawrence that comes in on tankers that if any one of those breaks, we destroy our environment because we can't figure out how to get a pipeline from where our oil is to the East Coast. How dumb is that? Because the mayor of Montreal doesn't want a pipeline. I'm going to Montreal this week to see the parade, and while I'm there, I'm going to hang with the mayor for a while. I'm sure we can work it out. That's my whole point. I want to get my hands dirty in these things. The Indigenous and First Nations people have a proposal called the Eagle Spirit Pipeline, one that they're developing themselves. They're over in China right now trying to get capital for it. I would support that project because the chances of that getting tied up in court are zero. It's their deal. We need to support more of those entrepreneurs in First Nations to help them get their deals done because they're like us. We're all Canadians. We don't want to tie each other up in court. We've got to be more flexible in giving people what they want if it's their equity. They have the right to stop it, but they all want jobs too. This is a delicate matter of negotiations, but they certainly want the same things. And by the way, while we're on pipelines, and people say to me, why do you want to do pipelines? Here's what we're going to do as Canadian people. If you want to build a pipeline and your private sector doing it, there's one thing you're going to do for me. We're going to put a fiber optic pipe beside the pipeline, right attached to it, loaded with fiber, and provide a gateway to every community in Canada. You're going to pay for as the private sector. You, the Canadian people, will own the bandwidth of this fiber. It will monitor the pipeline, its temperature, any leaks. Anybody approaches it, it will see it. But the key is that we can provide that conduit, that basic pipeline, which is a pathway to put high-speed fiber to every community in Canada at an extremely low cost. I mean, I wonder why no one thought of that already. I mean, they should be doing it because you're already building the pipeline, you're already excavating the land, you're putting in place two things. Pipelines are the modern-day railroads, but while you're doing it, put in the fiber. Our country will be very competitive with everybody having 100 up, 100 down internet, which we can do using that idea. But that's the kind of thing that you don't never thought of. Doesn't run a business, that's why. Another question. Yes, ma'am, right there.
I'm not sure if you heard her question correctly. She actually asked about the Indigenous population, not pipelines. So I would assume she's referring to the fact that they have lower health outcomes, education outcomes, and the rest of us in Canada enjoy. What would you do to address that?
Well, I think the biggest problem with all of their issues has a lot to do with the lack of economic growth in their communities. That's what I've heard from their own leaders. They're asking, some have issues around land ownership. That's an issue, as you know. They also have huge economic issues because there's a tremendous amount of challenges on health care and just economic growth. There is none. I think you want to supply somebody their own ability to grow their future. And I think what we have to do is allow them, particularly in the lands they own and control, to have some economic development, which is what people have been trying to do now for 40 years. You want to solve that problem in perpetuity, there has to be economic growth. There has to be jobs for young people. I haven't heard one First Nations leader say they don't want a job for their family. Not one. They don't want constant handouts. They don't want that anymore. They want to build an economy within their own society and their own beliefs. That's what I'm hearing, and that's what I'm going to support. It's a complicated file, though. That includes healthcare, education, and a social network. That's what we have to provide. And the only way we can get that, you got to get economic growth within their communities. We have not solved our problem if the rest of us are growing at 3% and they have zero growth. That's not a solution. So that's my answer.